Hello and welcome to the Final Phoenix podcast. Laura Perry here with Robert Jones. And today we're going to switch it up a little bit. Usually, Robert and I talk about a topic, and we may or may not have a brief discussion about it beforehand. We may or may not do a entire like here's an outline. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. I really love it when our conversations unfold, though. So um, the idea that came about this specific topic, which really we don't have one, which is kind of the point here, is Robert said, we have to come up with something to talk about because I don't think that anybody's going to want to sit there and listen to us be in silence. And I said, well, there's only one way to find out, right? So I love this topic of silence and quiet mind because it's very underrated. And some of my favorite teachers and some of my favorite coaches have reiterated to me over and over again that life actually happens in the silence. And as I have become more accustomed to entertaining silence and sitting in a quiet mind and really having the time and the space to reflect, see my own insights, and allow those to take me where they take me. I've actually grown more. So the excitement that I have about this topic is we actually grow more in the silence and in the downtime than we will ever grow from thinking or overthinking. And I just wanted to talk about that because Robert and I went to a 4-day conference over the last week, and one of the topics there was how one of these teachers, his name was Sydney Banks. He actually went to teach I think they said it was a 3-day lesson, and part of his lesson was what he felt called to do, which was to sit there for 20 or 30 minutes without saying a word, and how uncomfortable everybody got from that. And during this conference that we were at, actually, there are prolonged periods of silence, and I found it beautiful. I found it really comforting that a room full of people can come together in a united way. And it's very obvious that we're there when we're sitting in that silence and how connected we are, because otherwise we're looking at our differences in thought and the ways that we think and what we have opinions about, etc. So when there's silence, it's just so beautiful to me. And some people find discomfort in that, and they can't use silence and quiet mind for what it's meant for. And that is where our internal guidance comes from. That's where our insight comes from. That's where our everything that we need to know about the direction that we're going in life comes from sitting in that space and seeing what comes up. And sometimes that's just moving through the discomfort of it. So that's what I wanted to talk about today because it has given me so much value in my life for a lot of reasons. And one is because it was so uncomfortable for me to find and sit through and see what comes out of sitting in silence. So, Robert, what are your intro thoughts on this topic, or what do you want to add to the conversation?
Nothing to say. I don't know. This is a tough one because there's all sorts of different um, people, so many different ways you can take that, so many different ways you can apply it. Sometimes I like we talk about the silence. Sometimes I have such an active mind that I like to veg out. Some people say you're wasting your life. And I'm like, if you live in my brain for a day, you tell me that you don't want to just unplug, right? And that unplugging can be in whatever. So maybe I want to veg out, listen to a book on tape, watch a TV, or take a walk, whatever it is, it's what works. But the silence thing, what's super interesting about that, even though I've understood it intellectually, um, it's it's understanding the purpose of it opposed to the ability to do it. And I had a long learning curve on that. And I'm probably still learning on it. But I guess, okay, so somebody said once, like in the silence, you wait in there and then the answer will come. But if you're in there waiting for the answer, you're not doing it right. Let me rephrase that. I definitely am not doing it right because I'm in my silence. Oh, come on, come on, come on, come on. And obviously that's not silence, right? So I get the the reason for it. And when it happens, I think it's really neat. But I need more framing of it because talk specifically to people. I would tell, okay, so like talk about like sales in the sales office. When there was silence, and this is every sales coach will tell you this too. Most newbies will get very uncomfortable in the silence. And I had a good coach once that said, "Do you know what's happening during that silence?" Because I like to talk, right? And I'm like, I don't know, but it's really uncomfortable. So I just start talking. He goes, "Yeah, what you're doing," and this helped me a lot. And so this is an analogy of what I'm doing to myself. By not letting that person sit in silence, you're not allowing him or her to think. So you're interrupting thought like you would interrupt somebody talking. So when he put it into those words, and I'm telling you, I got real uncomfortable when there was silence in the office. Is there something I can tell you to get you to move on? Come on. And plus, I'm pretty fast going. So I sat there and I learned to relax, and it made all the difference. And I realized that when I speak up, I'm interrupting that person. I'm interrupting his thoughts, and that's just rude. So I've known that for decades, but I've never known it like I've known it now, like a universal truth, like we learned at the seminar and what the teaching is. I had it, and so I can say, yeah, I get it, but I hadn't even been doing it to myself. So I don't allow myself to sit in silence. I want to interrupt myself. So speaking of that, my experience with the course we went to, the first time I went because Laura went, and I didn't have any other reason. I love self growth. So all she has to do is tell me it's about self growth. And I'm thinking, great. Are we going to walk on coals? Are we going to break a board? Are we going to do a trust fall? I mean, I don't know. I had all this stuff in my head. And no, we're going to sit and watch these two old guys say nothing. Right now, they didn't just sit there saying nothing, but I'm saying from my perspective, I'm going, am I missing something here? And it was like a form of meditation. So when you first meditate, you don't know how busy your mind is. And then after a week or two of proper meditation, you can start seeing your thoughts. They're like popcorn. And you say, holy cow, my brain is way overactive. Another couple more weeks, you can put it aside, let it pop over there. And I did the same thing with the seminar. The first time I was uncomfortable and I didn't get it. And the second time I understood the reason for it. Didn't mean I got it, but I understood the reason. So I waited them out. I was really patient, Laura. It's like, okay, they're going to be 2 minutes of not talking. I can do this. And then the third one was more like just sitting in like you would with the sunset. You don't sit there and rush a sunset. You don't sit there like when we were at the beach in Costa Rica. We sat back and just enjoyed it. We were in the moment, we were present, and we were watching the sunset. We weren't going, hurry up, son. We got things to do. It's time for margaritas. We just enjoyed the moment. And then I guess from that perspective, you get the answers. And I had a little insight on that. I used to always debate this. Is like, well, if you don't know, if you don't, okay, here's my big debate that I settled myself by being quiet. I know I'm not being very quiet here. So see, she's sitting there patiently. See, she's modeling what she's talking about, and I'm modeling the opposite. We do that for you guys. Now, anyways, back to the conversation. So my insight was this. I had a problem with saying, well, all the answers are out there. It's universal. If you just shut up and be quiet, you'll find your answer. And I'm going, well, how does that work if you don't know it? You have to go to somebody that knows it, and then they can tell you. And part of that is because of the way my art is. Some things you do need to be taught, right? But then sitting there thinking about that and being able to accept new ideas, having an open mind and having a viewpoint of maybe, I know you guys can't believe this, but maybe I'm wrong. Okay. So maybe there is a viewpoint. And then I realized that person that I'm going to get information from had to get that information from somewhere. So ultimately, that information was out there in the ether somewhere, and somebody collected it. And then they packaged it and they sold it to me.
Yeah, and it is.
So that was a big moment of mine to realize how valuable the quiet and waiting for the answer is, opposed to as soon as you're looking outside yourself. And I'm not saying grabbing a coach or asking for specific information. That's where I was getting confused is wrong. If I have something that I need, a marketing piece or something, I'm not going to wait quietly. I'm just say, hey, Laura, do these colors go together? She'll look at it in 3 seconds. She'll say no. And then I'm done, right? I won't sit there for 20 minutes doing that. But when I'm thinking about major decisions and directions of my life and my company, and I'm getting confused in all the details, that quietness allows the stuff that's not critical to fall away. And then the answer does come to you. And oftentimes it's way better than what you probably could pay for.
Yeah.
So that was my huge outtake, insight, or whatever you want to say about sitting in silence.
Well, one of the things that I notice is when we're using our intellect, we are essentially cutting off the energetic channel to what many call our higher selves or universal minds or our soul or the guidance that we have in life because the energy essentially moves up to the intellect, and the intellect and the thoughts are trying to figure things out, and we can put ourselves into a space of overthinking, and we're never going to be able to figure something out by overthinking. I don't know if you've tried it, but it doesn't work. It never works. All it does is exhaust the mind and the body. And so when we're looking for direction in life or direction in our business, we have to open that channel up. And the best way to do that is to get the intellect out of the way. And there's a ton of different methods that you could probably practice and try in order to do that. But really, it's not a method. It's not necessity to learn a method because it's who we are. Like we are that silence underneath the intellect. Like there's a part of each of us that is so deep and it's underneath the intellect, and we're all connected to each other in that space, and we're all connected to the universal consciousness and universal mind, and the akashic records, and all of the information that ever is and ever will be is in that space. So if we have a question about where do I take my life, what do I do with my business, what's the next best thing for me, we can ask that question. But until we move the intellect out of the way so that it can come into our awareness through quiet mind and through a quiet space, then we're never going to get the answer. We're going to be trying anything and everything. We're going to be listening to other people. We're going to be studying probably really hard, reading books, trying to figure out what our business is missing. And that's because it's not out there. It's not out there and out in front of you. It's from within, because a lot of us who are we're creating things that have never been created before, or we're creating our version of something that's maybe been created. So unless we can slow down and find that quiet mind, the quiet space, sit through the discomfort and let all that energy that we're holding on to burn off, we're never going to be looking in the right place for the answers. And I said it was very obvious to me how connected we all are. And the more that I practice coaching in the way that I do, which is essentially a way of tapping into the higher self of another person and being like, this is what's coming through me for you to know, does it make sense? And people can kind of decide how that makes sense for them and have their own insights on things. And that's what we want, right? We want that insight. We want the sight from within. That is the guidance right there. Sometimes we feel it in energy. Sometimes we see a vision. Sometimes we have a thought I know George Pransky called it like a miniature awakening. And I was like, absolutely. That's exactly what it feels like. But also to be able to listen to other people without distractions. Like we are so conditioned to feel uncomfortable in silence. But that's what connects us all, right? That's what connects us to our higher mind and our guidance and our soul and our spirit is that quiet space. I love the quote that that life lives in the silence. Like that's where all the magic is. Because it's no surprise that we're conditioned to avoid it. We're conditioned to feel uncomfortable. We're conditioned to look everywhere outside of us, but there. We're conditioned to distract ourselves because our minds and our thinking minds are conditioned to pick up our phone, you know, go read an email. Oh, somebody's talking. Let me just respond to this text message real fast. Or, oh, this is a quiet time. Let me just check my email, whatever, right? So people are conditioned to look everywhere outside of themselves, but within. And that's why I wanted to bring this topic up, because it is uncomfortable at first. It is like, it feels lazy, right? It feels like we're not working very hard. It feels like we're going against everything that we should be doing in order to be successful, or our definition of success. But it is so important and it's required if you want to meet your definition of success. It's required to find your quiet mind and to allow yourself to sit in silence and listen fully and, allow yourself to feel good, right?
Well, I think our intellect is tasked with the duty of figuring things out. It's his job. We learn it from when we get that little game when we're a kid where we put the star in the star hole and we put the square in the square hole, and then mom has to come and pull it out and they all fall. You know, that orange yellow game that I think every kid has ever had, or if not, you bought your kids. And you need that for day to day living. I mean, if I got to go to work, I got to make sure I have enough gas. I got to make sure that, the cars work. There's stuff that the intellect is tasked to do. And then there's things that it has no business doing. And sometimes those some people are naturally trained that way, but sometimes a lot of us that get in our own way. It's probably why we really like the self growth and all the bettering ourselves. Part of that is because I think that part gets blurred, and I think it pushes us that way a little bit for the right reasons. So even if you get information from somebody, you still have to sit with it and determine whether or not that advice actually fits you. But the problem, I think, and at least speaking for myself, is if you give me a system or advice to run my business better or something, even if you know better, even if you've done it, if I tried to sit in quiet and say, is this a good idea? Instead of sitting there long enough, what I would start doing is I would start dissecting that, and I would my intellect would take over and I would start working it. And I would start thinking this, that, which does not allow other things to come in. And if I would just sit there and say, thank you for your advice and sit with it for a while, maybe not let my brain go where it goes and just listen to it. And I've done it a couple of times in my life, so I know it works. All of a sudden you get the point to where that ain't going to work because we do it this way. Oh, and now all of a sudden you understand the advice at a deeper level, and it makes that advice, even if you don't use it, more valuable because you know why you don't use it, and you can make a choice to change what would have made it fail. But if not, you're thinking of just that advice, and that advice becomes the whole world, right? So I get it. I'm not going to say anywhere where I'm a two on a scale of 1 to 10 of doing it, and I'm not uncomfortable with silence. I'm more I'm more louder than I can hear the silence, if that makes sense. So I'm not uncomfortable with it, but things that come out of my mind, I have speaking for myself, so other people are different. I have a need to organize my thoughts, and I've learned to do that through verbal communication. And I didn't know I did that. I was at a church group once, and I was rambling off on things, and the lady across the thing, best thing I got out of that church, well, not the best thing, but one of the best things, she's this older lady, and she's grandma, and she goes, oh, you verbalize to organize, you organize to verbalize, go ahead and talk, let us know when you're done. And I was like, what? And I reflected on that. See, this is where the silence came. I reflected on that when I realized is that I would often start a conversation with the opposite of what I ended with because I would talk through it. Laura, on the other hand, does that all in her head, gets it all done, and then she takes a whole 25-minute conversation and boils it down and then says, let's do this. And then I argue with her because I don't know how she came to that conclusion, and I think she's coming up with nothing. And then all of a sudden she goes, well, that's not how you upload. And then she tells me all the backstory. Of course, this is why I think we may or may not get along. I do it the opposite. I give her all this other stuff that confuses it, and then I come up with that sentence, and I go, "Yeah, let's do it that way." So, with listening to the silence for me is very difficult because I've trained myself to disregard that, to think that there's nothing important in there, that there's nothing that's going to happen. Now I know that not to be true because I had a few insights during the quiet time, and I the biggest one was that I realized that even if I get information from Laura, she had to get it from somewhere. So somebody somewhere down the line had to shut up, be quiet, and listen to the universe give them the information. And if it happened to them, it can happen to me. Oh, I can. Oh, and that was my big insight from the 4-day weekend was like, oh, it is real. So my
Yeah,
insight was, oh, it is real.
and you know what's amazing about quiet mind and insight and reflection is it's literally the fastest way for you to get to where you're trying to go. So, with all the intellect, and the intellect is necessary because it kind of works as a team with quiet mind and it can help you out. But if you like, quiet mind is it's the river that carries everything, right? If we're just singing in our intellect, we're just walking over stones in a dry riverbed. So quiet mind is what is moving everything through to fruition. So absolutely everything that we're looking for is there, and we think that it's not. So all we're really doing by every thought that we throw into the mix, we are putting another boulder for us to climb. It's actually working in reverse from what we're taught. We are causing ourselves more heartache, more frustration, more tasks, more work than we need to actually do. When if we sat in quiet mind for as long as it takes for it to stop feeling comfortable for you, then you'll begin to love it. And then you'll say, oh, this is everything that I've been looking for. This is home. This is all the information in the books and in the writings and the people. This is what I've been trying to find right here. And then you get one little insight, which is a sight from within, and it unfolds, and then you know exactly what you need to do. It's
The
easy.
metaphor, it's easy.
It's easy. It's
Yeah.
so easy. It's
Okay. I, I
so
got,
simple that
I got, I
we
have,
actually, it's too simple is the problem. It's so
yeah,
simple. It's too simple for people because the
no,
intellect tries to figure it out.
it might be simple. It's not easy. I have students that I always say, oh, this is easy. And now it becomes a joke. I'll do something that's I've done for 32 years. And I say, oh, this is easy. And they higher bosses look at me like, huh?
No, you know
But
why? You know
well,
why?
wait. Let's go back to your metaphor
Okay.
before I lose it. Because
Okay, go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
yeah, okay. Well, we were talking about something else, and I don't want to get off on, I want to stay on this topic. You used a river as a metaphor. And I realized when you were talking about that, is that we all have our river. And some people may have a creek, some people may have a raging river. And I think the people that benefit the most out of this, using the metaphor, that benefits the most out of this are people that have the raging river. Because when you step in the raging river, it carries you away. Somebody that already is good and has a kind of a peaceful mind doesn't have a raging river. They have a slower moving one. And if they step into that, they can step out pretty easy. So as you were talking, I used to do this meditation where I'd always in my head go down to the river, sit there at peace and just watch it flow. I never meditated next to a raging river, right? But I know how the minds are. And what you were saying there is that, all those thoughts, this is what I was taking out of, are kind of the river, right? And just because your river is slower than my river doesn't mean that you don't have the same access to the same peace and quiet and this, or I don't have the same access as you do, because I do know your river is a little bit more calmer than mine in most cases, right? And you
It
know that.
wasn't always though. It
I know,
wasn't.
but I just know, as of speaking of today, I know that, and I rely on that a little bit. But just because, like I said, just because I'm sitting next to, who cares what the river is? It's when I get into it that it's harder to get out of. And the quiet mind thing, in my analogy, slows my river down. And when my river slows down, I can see the things going past me that may or may not be important. And usually, here's the big Zen moment. I'm seeing thoughts go down the river. I go, oh, that's important. The real thing is, none of them are important, because that's just the noise. The river's the noise. I come back to where I'm sitting, and then all of a sudden the thought that I have there, not the stuff that are floating by, right? You've done meditations, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong, where
Hmm.
you're just letting the thoughts go, right?
Hmm.
Okay. And I don't know if this, I never spoke to you about this, but I'd be curious. Okay, so when I get an overly active mind, I have a meditation that I do, and you say, okay, you let the thought come in, you respect it, then you let it go. You go, this is pretty easy. Oh, that's a thought. Boom. Oh, that's a thought. Oh, this is easy. And then all of a sudden, the thought grabs you, and for 5 minutes, you're thinking about it, and you go, oh my god, that's what they mean. I'll let it go, and then you do let it go, and you go, this is easy, and then you get another thought, and it takes 20 minutes to get through it. So that type of um, where you're conscious of that, and you realize that that isn't even what you're trying to do, is to get engaged. So you're trying not to engage your thoughts, and even trying that, you engage your thoughts, right?
Yeah.
So that quiet mind is when what I'm thinking, right? Is when you learned how to do that, and you don't engage it unless, I guess what I'm asking or talking about is I think it feels different. I think like when I'm doing the reason I brought the meditation up is because, okay, that's the thought, I need a new microphone. Bang, oh, let it go. Then all of a sudden you'll get a insight that is completely different than I need a new microphone. It's all of a sudden a feeling of whatever. Is that true? Is that what we're kind of talking about?
Yeah, yeah. So for the listeners, Robert and I are using the metaphor in very different ways. I'm using quiet mind as like almost like the oil of your car. Like without quiet mind, you're not going to go anywhere. You may go in circles, and then you're going to eventually, using the river as a metaphor, you're going to build a boat and figure out how to float down that sucker because it really is going to take you where you need to go fastest. Um, but the
So
other
so let's clarify that because I don't want to leave confused. I was using, I mean, what I got out of that, and I think I understood what you're saying too, but I switched the river metaphor to that's your mind, that's your thoughts flowing down the river, and you don't have to sit in the water. You can sit on the side of the water, and everybody's thoughts are different. So because
Yeah,
I have
and that's the thing
that's what I
is
was
that
thinking.
yeah, and that's the thing is that we will have this picture of what quiet mind means for us, and we can share that with other people, but my picture and your picture are going to look differently, right? Like a lot of people, they have using thought as an example here, they will have you know I like to use the metaphor of sand thought castles. We build up thought castles and then we move into them. So when you're saying, well, I had this thought and then I was thinking about it for 10 minutes and I'm supposed to be letting it go. Really, what we do is we just build a thought castle and we crawl in there and we live in it and we look around and we see what's there. And then we're like, oh, whoa, I was stuck into a thought, right? And then we tear it down and then we
Right.
do it again. Another metaphor that I like to use with thought is like it's like an ice block because we hold on to a thought so tightly that once we realize we don't have to do that, we could just let it melt and like let it flow. But what came to mind when you were saying that is insight is more of insight is very fast. Insight is very clear. It's delivered to us in such a way that thought is not. Thought is like, oh, I see it. And honestly, you don't have to try to even do anything with it or not. It's actually when we
That's
try
the
to
point.
not think about it is where we're like, oh, I'm not going to think about the
Well,
purple elephant in the room. And then all of a sudden you have 12 purple elephants. It's like we actually think that we have to do something with thought, but we don't. We could
Well,
just,
that's what I was trying to get at, and I wasn't very good at that. My point is that they are two different things, but they kind of come in the beginning from the same place. At least you think they do. And I couldn't differentiate between the quietness and or the thought, right? Or who am I? There's some difference there, and the insight, because I think everybody have had insights before, and they know that that's different. It never is a thought that gets you an insight, right? Even though it kind of, well, not might not be 100% correct because I'm an amateur at this, but it's definitely, we're almost saying you start the same place, but it's two different things. And I just want
yeah.
the listeners to when they do that to understand where, so because I got distracted off of what my thoughts were, thinking that since I wasn't in the thoughts, and that's a red herring. I went down a wrong rabbit hole, but the insight kind of comes from a different place, even though I'm using the metaphor of meditating by the river. And what I was trying to get at is the river or your thoughts, and you're thinking on whether they're raging or whether it's a creek. It's still thoughts. They still have the same power, but the calmer you are, the slower that river becomes. But the insight still doesn't come from the river. The insight comes from where you're sitting looking at the river. But that's a really hard thing to do if you haven't experienced that, right? So I
Yeah.
know when my thoughts, okay, like yesterday, remember when I had too much coffee? I was in the, whoa, your camera. Whoa. Hi, how? When I was yesterday, remember when you kicked me out of the house? I was well, my thoughts were taken over, right? Because I
Yeah,
had too
too
much
much
caffeine.
coffee. I was like, you got to go to work because I know
Yeah,
this conversation will be different in 2 hours when
because it
you
would go
are
nowhere.
burning through the
Well,
caffeine. Yeah.
here's the thing that I never told you. 3 hours later, I called the one of my employees and said, "Hey, let's walk through this real quick." It was a 10-minute conversation, it fixed itself and I learned something, and all the angst that I had in the morning was the river. They were useless. I could do nothing about it, and it was not. But in that moment, being rushed out like that, I felt like that was the thing that I needed to put my concentration on. Yet I knew it wasn't. And so a year ago, 4 years ago, I wouldn't have got off of that thought pattern until the conversation. But I got out of that as soon as I got to the car and drove out. My brain said, "Yeah, that's over. Let's listen to a book on tape."
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
so you can learn this stuff, I guess.
You can. And I just want to bring some context and clarity here just for the listeners is that, we talk about quiet mind and silence because it is a language of itself. It is a universal language that is where your insight is born, where reflection is born, where you can actually change yourself instantaneously. But we have to get through the discomfort of sitting in silence because we've actually been taught a different language. We've been taught it's akin to like being taught Spanish and being told like it's the only language in the world. It's the only way that you're allowed to operate because it's just the best way for us to communicate. Well, that's not true. There's many different languages, and the universal language within us as a spiritual entity, which we are all connected as a unity, as a universe, is silence. That's what connects us all. There's an energy there that connects us to each other and to our soul and to our higher mind and to absolutely everything that we need. So when I talk about quiet mind and I talk about operating from this space, we do want to learn to how to get back to being this our primary way of being because it is natural. We actually don't have to try very hard. All we have to do is give ourselves the opportunity and sit through all the discomfort and all of the reasons why we've been told not to do that because we're not doing enough, because it's lazy, because it's not productive, whatever, right? Whatever thoughts we've been generating. And then the other thing that Robert and I are talking about here is the difference between thought and insight. So I want to talk about thought because thought is a creative force. That's what everything is created from, right? Everything was once a thought, but thought is also an energy. So just like, sometimes we'll have really crazy weather outside. We'll have a bunch of thoughts coming into our awareness, and sometimes it might be less. Sometimes it might be snow. Like we're always going to be experiencing thought because that's part of our human experience is to have thought available to us, and we can say, do I want to think about this thought or do I want to just let it go? And you eventually will become a master of just letting thought kind of blow through your experience like wind. You don't have to hold on to any of it. And ideas are another form of thoughts. It's just energy. And when we can let all that go without making it a job or making it a chore or whatever, like, I'm going to try to let this thought go. I'm not going to hold, now we're just doing more stuff by trying not to do stuff. So it really is so natural to just let the water flow, right? Let it go, let the wind blow. We're taught differently. And then the other thing that Robert and I are talking about here is insight, and which is a sight from within this beautiful river of intelligence that runs through everything in life. And insight is the very quiet nudges of, hey, go this way, or hey, do this. Like it is our guidance. It's our guidance system. And we come into this world thinking that we have to figure everything out. And our ego will be like, yeah, you have to figure everything out and I have to help you. Right. And that's not true either. The ego's wrong about that. We can make friends with the ego, but we have a different compass and we have a different map. And it's in the silence and it's in the quiet where if we could turn off our radio, sit with ourselves, if we could turn
So,
off our book on tape and sit with ourselves and actually relax into the silence, let the discomfort. I remember when I was in major trauma, and someone told me you have to sit through the things that you're avoiding, that started my journey to starting to process all the energy that was on top of me being able to reach the silence because I just hadn't processed it. So those are just the different things we're talking about here. Quiet mind, stillness, your peace is who you are, it's your true nature. And then the difference between, insight,
so
idea and thought are similar, and then insight is very deep from within.
I got a question for you. I was thinking because I don't have an answer yet, but I'm thinking I do. I've had a lot of insights. You can have small insights like, I should have fixed that stair yesterday. I went and stubbed my toe. You can have major life changing insights, right? But have you ever had an insight, or do you ever get insights? My inclination here is that we don't get insights when we're angry, when we're stressed. We get, unless it's a total major breakdown, right? We get insights mostly the calmer we are. So, like if I have a discussion with you, and it's call it heated discussion or whatever, the insight happens after I evaluate and I calm down, and I am able to see both sides of the view, and all of a sudden I get those little minor ones like, oh, you weren't even listening, or oh, that was a misunderstanding, oh, you used a word wrong, whatever it is. But I'm asking you, think back, because we're talking about insights, because I think people might get, I got confused on what was what. So do
Yeah.
you agree with me that you don't get a lot of insights when you're scattered and when you're
Yeah,
all
yeah,
over?
yeah, yeah. So you'll begin to notice the difference between a thought and an insight. And, the thought that you should have fixed the stair after you stub your toe. I doubt that was an insight. That was a thought of like,
That was
oh,
a
I should
pain thought,
have.
right?
Yeah, that was like a oops,
Okay,
I learned my
not an
lesson,
insight.
right?
Okay, that was
No,
a
but
thought gone wrong.
no,
I
but
get
you're
I get
right.
it.
Yeah, you're right though. Insight comes to us when we are of high vibration. And what I mean by that is when we're in a good feeling, because insight is a high vibrational energy. So now we're getting more into like quantum physics and the explanations of type of energy frequencies, which emotions are also energy frequency. Energy and motion is what emotion translates to. But the cool thing about thought is that we notice a thought, maybe it's a good thought, like rainbows. And then we can think about rainbows, and we're actually pulling that thought into our nervous system and we're experiencing that thought as energy. But we also can do that with something neutral, and we can add negative definition, and we can do that with something positive and add negative definition. Like, my point here is that thought exists in every frequency you could ever think of. So you'll have negative thoughts, or you can even have a positive thought, give it a negative meaning, and you're going to negatively experience it.
Mhm.
Um, we can experience all of these. Like, that's part of our free will is and part of our human experience, that we all get to do this. Like, it's just part of this experience here in this plane. But insight exists in high vibration. So that's by that I mean good feelings. So joy, peace, anything basically neutral or higher, you're opening yourself up to see the map, right? It's like if we walk around angry in life, it's like that part of our guidance system cannot get to us. It's always like throwing darts. Hey, go here, go here, go here. Like the insights are always there. You're just not going to notice them unless you lift up your vibrational state and raise your vibration. And that's why gratitude and being in a state of gratitude works so well, because gratitude is such a high vibrational way of being that you're going to notice your insights. You're going to notice those nudges. You're going to be able to reflect a lot faster, and you're going to just see your guidance system. It's going to be like, oh, everything that I've been looking for is here in this higher vibrational space. And then you add the quiet mind so you can actually read the map, right?
Okay, so this is good. So insights are usually what you said was like a guide toward whatever you're doing that you need to do that's probably more positive. And that's why an insight, probably unless it changes your whole behavior, isn't going to come to you like when you're angry, unless it changes you not to be angry. You're not going to get an insight into angriness, I guess. This is hard for me to explain, but I get it because it is a guide, right? So when you have everybody knows what an insight is. It's just hard to put words to it. We probably shouldn't be trying this, but when I get a little insight, it's a piece of information, even though it's not information. It's a feeling, or it's a thing that gets me to go a little further that direction. It says, yeah, you're going the right way. And I don't get an insight telling me ever to go the other way. You know what I
No.
mean?
Yeah,
Like
you can have
I don't
thoughts.
get an insight and all of a sudden my life becomes worse because of that insight. I don't think so. Are we
No.
talking kind of
Nope.
the,
Nope.
yeah.
Insights are always like, first of all, um, everything is designed to work out for you, right? In life. Um, Insight is a way for you to participate. in the guidance that comes along with everything working in your favor. And we're not going to have a negative insight that is going to completely destroy our life. Like an insight is always positive,
Okay.
it's always high vibrational, it's always from a space of unconditional love. And that's because of the nature of where it's coming from. It's coming from a higher reality, a higher realm that you can't see because it's vibrating so quickly, right?
So what would you tell people then? This is like I know all over the place here. So I was like to tie it. I'm the one that's trying to tie it back down to business and everything. So this is interesting
Right.
for
Yeah,
me.
Robert, just for the listeners, Robert likes to intellectualize things, and that's good because sometimes I'm on the other end of let's just sit in the energy of the
Yeah,
feeling and like, and
and I'm
that's
not kidding.
necessary.
Can we define those three energies so I can put them to work for me?
Yeah,
But my
three easy
question is,
steps.
yeah, three easy steps, please. The my question kind of stems from people that I've talked with before. And there's a thing that you hear: trust your instincts, trust your intuition. Or people say I don't, but I do know some people that really shouldn't trust their intuition, and then they get to a point to where they realize that whatever that intuition is not telling them the truth. So I'm thinking about that person right now, or a person like that, because I don't have anybody in mind, but they are. A good advice would be to calm down and learn to trust yourself. And I can hear this person saying, every time I've done that, my life has gone crapola, right? So, but that's where they're at. But that's because they're not really in tune to that. So, how would you tell somebody, or how would somebody that's in that position start to learn to listen to that inner voice or whatever they're going to hear from this conversation when maybe they're coming from a point of view that every time they've done that, they've gotten mixed messages, they've made wrong
Well,
decisions, right? You,
yeah,
you
well,
know,
so much of it is okay. So our intuition is never going to lead us astray. So the challenge is to actually begin to know ourselves in a way that is helpful and we can feel what is a green light, what is a red light, what is a yellow light. Like that is how I learned when I was like, what is this feeling? And it was like, stop. And then another feeling was like, okay, go ahead. This is a direction for you. And then another one, I gave myself the yellow light too because I just didn't know. So I kind of was able to put something on the back burner if I couldn't determine where it was. So a lot of it is understanding what your intuition feels like for you and what your yes and no's and maybes feel like.
Okay,
Um,
so when I went through that, I read somewhere, somebody told me something that they said that my calibration was off. I need to learn to calibrate what's right and what's wrong. It's not that I was getting the wrong messages; it was that I wasn't calibrated to what the message was, and that really helped me. So I started keeping a journal and stuff, and I just started to, here's my three-step process, and I said, okay, here's the reason I made this decision, and when the decision didn't turn out, I looked back at that and said, oh, and then eventually I recalibrated and I could say, oh, this is very similar to that. That's a red light. Because I didn't know I sometimes thought red was green. Sometimes I thought green was red. And I'm
well,
thinking about people that do that. There has to be a way to get them, because it's a horrible thing. What I'm trying to say is it's a horrible thing when you are being told to trust the universe and trust everything, and you have evidence that you can't trust yourself.
it's disconnection from yourself. And actually, it's not. I don't want to say that it's disconnection from yourself because we are always 100% connected to ourselves. There is just so much distraction going on that there is an illusion of disconnection because when you know where your intuition, and we're talking about intuition now, so we're not even really talking about insight anymore at this point, but a knowing. Intuition is a knowing. Intuition is a feeling. It's not a thought. It's not a I weighed all the pros and cons here, and this decision is the best one based on all the information and thoughts that I've had. That is not intuition. Intuition is a knowing. And in order for us to know on a feeling basis, we have to begin to understand how to feel comfortable in silence. And that is how you generate those feelings of knowing. And
Yeah.
I've always been very in tune with my intuition. So I'll say this, I was always very in tune with my intuition. And I made some really stupid decisions and I heard the red flags. I heard the red light. I felt it all. Like I was like, did it anyway. And then I paid for that. And then when I was recovering from traumatic experiences and PTSD and stuff, my calibration, as you like to say, was completely off because there was so much energy on top of my energy system that I needed to process or do away with or just release from my aura. So I was carrying all of that and it made it staticky. It's like you can't see the TV screen very clearly because all the static was there. And that's what it is. And so until we remove all the statics that's there, we can't be like, I know that this for a fact is 100% true. And I tell you when I feel things like that, and I'll say, I know that this is the right decision for us or for me. And I'll say, my intuition is this and that. And so then you just learn from there what that means to you and what it feels like to you, because it is one of those really strange articulations of like, this is what the color red looks like. We try to explain it, but it's a feeling thing. It's an anchoring in yourself that you can't learn if we're constantly running away from silence and constantly running
So
away
they're
from
kind
quiet
of
mind.
okay. So they're really definitely two different things, and I can see that now. And I was just thinking about somebody listening to this. That I always think about. Okay, well, what could somebody get out of this? And I'm thinking like, well, if I've never been able to trust myself because everything I've ever done breaks, then but that's not what we're talking about here. Here we're talking about insights, not intuition. So they're both internal, but they're kind of different processes. So that makes sense. And maybe if you're quiet enough and you observe enough and you just let those things come, maybe your intuition will get better because you'll have less distractions to see it. So, okay.
And you
Answer
know
my
what's
own
gonna
question.
and you know what's gonna help you develop that intuition is an insight on how to do that. And
Yeah.
all you have to do is say, okay, higher self, okay, universe, soul, mind, whatever you want to call it, that works for you. Some people call it God. Um, okay, universal intelligence. How can I tune into my intuition better so that I can understand myself and my energy system and my knowings? And
Okay.
you just let it go, and then you'll have an insight. And that insight is like, insight is like an answer that a bird kind of brings by. You're just like, oh, like I know we talked about how George Pransky called it like a miniature awakening, because that's what it feels like. It's not a thought that's like
It's
dry.
not a
It's not,
thought. That's
yeah,
important. It's not a thought.
yeah. It's
Where I
not like the
definitely see
wind.
that.
It's not even an idea.
Yeah, I know. It's
It's
just a
subtle. Yeah, it's
yeah. It's like,
subtle, but
oh,
yeah, it's
it's a,
almost like an energy punch, right?
yeah, it's almost like you've been looking at something, the same thing every day, and you realize that, oh, that is a red balloon. And you never, even though you've been looking at it, you just never seen it, I guess. So okay. So I got it. So my three-step process, everyone, comes down to one, you have to have a belief that there is a universal mind, or whatever you want to call that the answers come from, and you can't dispute that. So the belief is easy because it isn't just random. You can see it. Everybody has an idea. This computer, the Zoom, all this was out there somewhere, and somebody channeled it right into a product and stuff. So we know that everything that ever was and ever will be was out there before it was in here. So that's my step one, is to have that belief. Step two is to shut up and listen for it, and don't try to force it, because sometimes in quiet, 5 minutes of quiet may get you nothing, but that's giving you room to you need room. That's number step
Yeah.
two. You need room, and your thoughts do not, and your intellect does not want to leave the room. My intellect does not want to leave the room. It wants to figure it out, and it will try to help me. And that's too much noise. Listening to three channels at once. Good. And then number three is wait it out. There you go. I've brought the whole conversation down to three steps that Mr. Jones understands.
Well, see, the more I love your process, but the more effective method would be to just doesn't matter what you believe. Honestly, doesn't matter what you believe. Doesn't matter what you think. Sit in silence. You'll have the next insight that is going to show you that you don't need a three-step process. You'll also feel it in other people, the depth of their presence. You'll say, I need more of this in my life. I need more of this slowness. I need more of this calmness. I need more of this feeling that this person is putting out there. Because the feeling that they're putting out there is you in a way. Like they're teaching you how to remember who you are. This is how we remember as a part of the spiritual awakening is by being around other people that have tapped into this universal mind. So, there's really only one step, and that's to allow the silence and don't really you don't have to hold anything to it because it's already who you are. Your system already knows how to your system already knows how to utilize this. You don't have to learn anything. You don't have to understand anything. It's okay if you try, that's fine, but it's built in. And it's so built in. I know, I can't remember the teacher that said it, so I won't quote them, but she said that just like your finger heals when you cut it, you already know this. You already know this work. You already know how to do it. It's built into you. But if we're never giving ourselves the time or the space to experience it, then we're always running uphill. We're always taking our kayak and dragging it with one hand and grabbing the oar with the other. We're always going the opposite direction than we actually are wanting to go. That is very natural for us to want to be flowing downstream, as Abraham Hicks says, like you want to be in the flow, you want to be flowing, and that is how you get to that space. So there might be uncomfortable feelings at the beginning. You sit through them, you get used to it, and then all of a sudden you realize how addictive it is because you're getting insight after insight after insight after realization after reflection after internal connection, and your relationship with yourself gets better. You start to understand your intuition and you start to really trust that you do have everything that you need, that there isn't anything outside of you that you need. um
So
so
here's my
yeah.
big
And the
insight.
problem is, I just want to say this, Robert, because the
Yeah, well, of
problem is that we do try to intellectualize it and we
course we
do
do.
try to put it into a system. And when you give yourself permission to, like, hey, I don't have to do anything because my system already knows how to do this, you want to put the intellect to sleep. So many people are like, here's how you do it. Let's do the system. They're creating and they're turning the intellect on. And the goal is to let the intellect sleep so that it can actually allow you to experience this.
So here's my Zen moment. Life is just one big insight. The problem is we can't take it all at once. So we get little bites of it until we figure that out. Then we'll just live in insight. There you go.
Pretty much.
That was
Pretty
my
much.
insight.
Well,
But
it goes right along with we're all already enlightened, and it's 100% true. We are
yeah,
already spiritual beings. We are already everything that we need to be. We just forgot. And then we're adding all of these thoughts as to why we're not. So, what we're doing as we allow insight after insight, quiet moment after quiet moment, is we're forgetting all of the stuff that society has taught us over the years, and we're slowly remembering and coming back into who we really are. And that does happen in incremental moments for some of us, like insight after insight. I like your um how we're elevating to what we already are. And then sometimes that happens really fast for people, right? Like Eckhart Tolle, Sydney Banks, like they have like massive awakenings and just sit on a bench for 3 days
yeah,
or
right.
however
Yeah, well,
long, right?
that's what I mean. So sometimes my point was is that it may take you a minute, it may take somebody else 100 days, and who cares? Just take your time. Don't if you try to get quicker and force it, it ain't gonna work. That's what we
No,
know. That's what we
that
know. But if you just sit back in the quietness and say this is okay, worst case scenario is you have some peace and quiet for a few minutes out of your day. I do know because I always look at this from if I was getting into this in the beginning, I was listening to this. I always want to make sure that people wherever they're at on the path realize what we're talking about so that they don't try to apply it to an area like I'm getting insight and I'm getting intuition kind of mixed a little bit. I want to make sure people understand that. So if you're sitting at peace and you're quiet, but you're trying to have an insight, I'm going to tell you it isn't going to work. That will be your insight that I'm trying too hard, right? And then the other one is if you just go into the process, that's an old Zen thing. If you go into meditation to become enlightenment, you'll never get enlightened. And then I always ask the question, then why do it? Because that's the goal. I get so confused on that, but because that's the intellect going to work. That's
and the
the intellect.
ego and
You
the
have to
ego like,
figure it out.
yep,
If I
yep.
meditate 20 minutes a day, if I do this system, I will be here. As soon as you fall for that, it may help. I'm not saying that it won't, but I'm saying that you probably won't get there. I mean, every great spiritual teacher had a moment of enlightenment. I mean, the Buddha sat under a tree. He took his rice and he cut it in half every day until he was down to 3 grains of rice or something like that. I can't remember the full story. And then all of a sudden he's like, wow, I'm enlightened. And then life happened. I know it wasn't that easy, but I always thought about that. I'm off track, but I always think, wow, take your food and start having it every day until you're down to the part where you're at like, get a starve. And I think you get enlightened pretty quick that way and get out underneath the tree and go back to work. But
But it doesn't work for everyone. So that's
no,
why a
it
system
can't, right?
that's
It
why
can't.
that's why a system
I
doesn't
get
work.
that. I get that.
That's why if we take a three-step process and we're like, this is how you find quiet mind and you access your intellect or your what's underneath your intellect and meet this space of universal consciousness where our souls are all one and we're literally swimming in a sea of this infinite information and data all the time that's available to us at any second is because we
Wow.
all find it differently, though.
I
So
was just
what
going to
works for
say,
me won't work for you. You have to
truthfully,
ask yourself. You have
truth.
to ask yourself. You have to ask yourself, and this is for you listening too. w- What is the difference between an insight and an idea? And then let it be. And you're go find
Well,
some silence to sit in, and then you'll get your answer when you need it.
if there was, and I'm still going to put it into a system, but if there was a system, somebody would have already packaged it, sold it, and we'd all be enlightened. In fact, look at all the books. Every book is that. Here's my system of what I found, which are very beneficial for you. But you're absolutely right, or 100%. I know that with just being you. It's like I have a process of doing certain things. You say, well, why don't you just do this and this and this? I said, I know that's coming from you, and I watch you do that. And honestly, dear, this is what I say. Honestly, dear, if I could do that, I would. But I am working on it, and I'm doing it this way. Now, I may end up at the same place, but my journey is going to be a little different. Thank God, because I want my journey to be different. I don't want to read the same book that you read, right? I mean, I do want to read it, but I want to get a different path thing. So, in conclusion, you know, there is a point of view that if you get away from yourself a little bit in that quietness, and if you learn to sink into it. So I'm trying to resist telling people how to do this now because you just got me thinking about that. Because, maybe sitting is, I don't know. I think sitting at peace is part of the meditation we used to do. I haven't done for a while. It's called sitting at peace. And that's where you just sit there and you just let everything fly. You can do that in conversations. I notice that a lot of people, when they talk, they're talking, they're not listening. And some people that really listen, I mean, here's the difference between really listening and not listening. If you're really listening, you're interested in what the person is saying and you're not trying to add anything to it. That opens up the whole conversation. But when you're saying, hurry up, Laura, get through this, because if you don't, I can't say this is me sometimes, most of the time. I got these 5 things. Oh my God, I forgot. Now I only have 3. What is she talking about? Oh, now I only have 2. Oh, what were we talking about? That's not the quietness. And people will watch this. They'll notice that about me.
No,
I'm
and
honest about it.
and
I live
interesting,
there.
yeah, and interestingly enough, Robert and I will have conversations, obviously not on the podcast, and it is more of like a feeling space of where we're just moving from a space of listening and responding, and it's not like, oh, I had a really good thought for the podcast, let me get it in there before we change the
Mhm.
topic, right? And that's where you want conversation to be because that's how we also will support each other with our own insights too. It's like, hey, I just had an insight. What do you think about this? And somebody might be like, whoa, I was just thinking the same thing. Or, whoa, I needed to hear that exactly the way that you said it. Right. And if we're
Yeah.
not, if we're always trying to plan what we're going to say or we're like pre-thinking it, it's not in the moment and it's not as
Well, if you're
valuable
not
because it
getting,
doesn't come from the same depth.
if you're giving a presentation on how to put a deck together, you better know what you're saying. You can't just sit there in quietness. But that's not what we're talking. And that's what I get confused on. I think sometimes that is what we're doing, using the metaphor. It's like, no, we're not putting a deck together. We are going to the universal consciousness and we're pulling information out. And it may be a deck or it may be a car or it may be a magazine. I don't know. But I want to go back to something you said. There are sometimes we'll have conversations. I just kind of realized that. And you'll ask me, what I think or whatever. And I have nothing to say because I'm just listening. I don't have feedback. And sometimes we like to do feedback with each other too, because we sometimes like each other. But there have been,
Always.
yeah, I know, but there's been conversations that I have sat there going, That's interesting. I have no thought at all about that. And then I'll be at work or something, and that's the conversation that made the biggest impact are the ones that I just look at you and say, I am not really, no, I have never thought about that. That's interesting thought because, and I thought about it, why is that? Like the next day it hits me. It's because I have no emotion or anything to that. I'm literally listening to your point of view and what you're thinking. I'm just hearing and I'm being there 100% present. And then all of a sudden, if it's appropriate the next day or even a week later, all of a sudden that and I'll do that to you. I'll say, you remember what we were talking about on the couch? And really, you were talking, I was listening, or vice versa. Or you'll say something like, you said something. And I'm like, and wow, when I said that, you said nothing. You just looked at me and said, yeah, that makes sense. And now you're giving me the point. Well, that's how this works. Okay, that's what I'm thinking is Laura's going to talk, and I'm going to actually be 100% present and allow it just to come in. It's so hard, especially if you're a teacher and talk, let's pull this back down to soulpreneurs and business. You have a product you think will change lives. You have a service. You are ready for that and you're ready to go. And now I'm telling you to shut up and let the other person just talk when you can fix this person. I mean, that's me as a teacher, right? We were talking about one of my big insights lately is that the last couple of years, I'm kind of really used to working with higher level students. And now I'm working with lower level who I really like to work with better. And I'm trying to get those people to have insights that took me 12 years to get. I'm trying to do it in a lesson. And all I end up doing is confusing the hell out of them and getting them thinking that they're lesser than they are. And so my big insight was stop making other people try to have your insights. Just let them do it on their own. So
Yeah.
there.
Well, there's always a time for it, There's always a time for what we need to know when we need to know it. But if we're not giving ourselves the stillness and the quiet and the space to receive it, we're never going to receive it. So,
Well,
just
before we go, I just want to say that's because I like to pull this back down to the real world sometimes. That's because I fell into what everybody falls into is that the word transformation. We have to get transformation to people. That's why we go to business. That's why we do what we do. But you know what? Nobody said we have to transform somebody every freaking conversation, right?
and the
Is
other
that true?
thing, true, but we don't actually transform other people ever, ever, ever. I mean, maybe in a skill that you're teaching people, but they will have their own insights that make their skills better. And all we're really doing is we're giving them the space to have the insight that they need. That's it. We're giving them the space and the stillness and the quiet so that they can come to the realization and receive something that they need to know from something outside of us, outside of our intellect, outside of our ego. It's coming from them. We just need to set the stage so that they can receive it.
See, and this is one of those moments where I heard you, but I don't. That's like maybe tomorrow. That was
Yeah.
like,
Okay.
well, wait a minute. If I am trying to solve somebody's problem and they paid me for it, and I'm selling a transformation, what I just heard was you don't need to do that. You just need to be quieted, and they will get it. And that's not what you said. That's not what you said, but that's what I heard. So, anyways,
Yeah,
that's it.
and it does really differentiate the when we talk about a skill and the art of being a human being, and that has a lot to do with the differentiating between being and doing. And when we're teaching a skill like marketing and or martial arts or whatever, it's a little bit different. But and honestly outside of the scope of this conversation, but at the end of the day, we aren't transforming anybody. They are doing it themselves, even if we are teaching them marketing, even if we are teaching them something that they didn't know, they are taking it and they are applying it. So,
Yeah, well, if they don't receive again, and that's kind of what I was trying to get at a little bit, is that we have to allow them to receive our information at the pace that they need to, and at their insight at the pace that they need to. Instead of like what I was trying to do was give everybody the insight. Sometimes it took me 12 years to get, and I'm thinking they can get it in a lesson. That's not my responsibility. In fact,
yeah.
actually, I can't do that. That's not my job. That's the universe's job. And that really relieved me a little bit to realize that, hey, just do the thing that I do, right? They want
Yeah.
to learn this, teach them that, and let them learn to listen to themselves so that they can get this insight through what I just taught them. So
Yeah, exactly. And I'll use business and marketing and like spiritual ascension a little bit as a example here, but I can teach people the things that I've learned based on my experience of, being an online in the online space with providing coaching and services and memberships and bringing communities together. Like I can always, even ads, even the really tangible stuff, I can give people education and my experience, but I can't force anybody to learn it. I can't force anybody to listen to every word. I can't even really know what's going to help them and what's going to help their business. And I certainly can't force them to apply it. So they're doing all of that. They're taking what I'm offering and they're utilizing it and applying that to their best ability and to what their own system is telling them, their own guidance is telling them to do. So they're like, yay, I got this new information. What do I do with it? Um, but when it comes to me being a coach, I do have to balance those two things because I do business coaching for soulpreneurs because I want everybody to have the skill of building your own business, whether it be in an online space or a brick and mortar, but allow yourself to earn your or step into your birthright. You don't have to earn your birthright of prosperity and all of the amazing things and the amazing forms of abundance that come with aligning with your higher self essentially and providing a service that will essentially completely support you in the ways that you need. But I also have to balance that with coaching people in a transformational way, which is showing them how to meet these best parts of themselves so that when they need it, they know how to find it. And that's one of the motivations for this conversation is today is I want everybody to find this space within themselves. I want them to be able to find that feeling of home because we tend to be the seeker looking for this in books and online courses and meditations and yoga and any kind of permission slip that we need. We're always looking for this space within us. We're looking for this guidance. We're looking for the purity and the simplicity and the ease and the effortlessness that this part of us is pointing us to, and nobody knows how to find it. They continue to shift into the intellect and the ego and outside of them. It's actually inside of you. So as a coach, I know that if I can show people that, then they will be guided to the right teachers, whether it's a skill. They'll be guided to the right mentors if they're meant to learn, Facebook ads or whatever. They will be guided intellectually or intuitively, not intellectually. They can use their intellect to be like, yeah, this sounds good to my intellect. My ego's like, go for it. My internal intuition is like, heck yeah. And insight led me here. Like, that's what you want. You want all your systems to work together, not the intellect on fire, pedal to the metal, ego's dragging you around. You get exhausted, you know?
isn't that every really great coach's real goal is to have the student outgrow the coach? I
Hmm.
mean, I used to not like think that. I'll be honest, because I was a martial artist. But when I look at it, my instructor told me the same thing. He told me that when I started, it's my goal that you're better than me one day. That would be an awesome day. He clarified that better than I am as a teacher at the time that I was. So in other words, like my goal as a teacher is to what took me 10 years since I've already done the 10 years. It's silly to make you wait 10 years. I can get you that information in 3 years now. And then you can that. So if I could go back in time, you're going to be like you as a orange belt, you better be, if you're my student, better than I was as an orange belt back then, because I have knowledge. But my goal is eventually get to the point to where, instead of being around a bunch of students, I'm around a bunch of people that surpass me. Wouldn't that be a wonderful world? So I don't know how many coaches actually believe that or do that. I know you do, and I know I do. It's like, and that is a little bit is a lot of that. If I think back to the martial arts, a lot of that is when the student learns to trust themselves and they learn that they are a power within themselves. I mean, when I used to teach adults and stuff, the one thing that I knew that I did really well, I mean, I couldn't put it into words, but when I knew success was when I always believed in the student more than they believed in themselves. But when that student hit that part where they believe in themselves as much as I believed in them, I don't want to say I was done with them, so don't take this wrong, but I was done with them. I now could just teach them and move on to somebody. I didn't have to hold their hand anymore. I didn't have to. And it's kind of I guess what we're talking about is doing that for yourself. This is what the whole conversation is. It's like I'll take a person, they come to me and they don't believe in themselves. They don't know that, but I actually believe in them more than they do. And then eventually they learn that inner power. And then all of a sudden they become like a peer opposed to a student, I guess, in a
Yeah,
weird way. So I think that's the same thing with learning to sit in the silence and stuff. But
it is.
I still really have a need to put this down, Laura, to a 4-step process and then package it and do a few
Well,
videos.
then I
I'm not going
think,
to because
I think I'm having a thought here. It's called an
okay,
insight.
awesome.
I think if I were to give anybody advice, it's look at that stuff, notice it, and then just ask the universe, how can no listening, hearing what I've heard, what can I do? What question can I ask to benefit me to opening up this space, or to learn more about why I don't need an a three-step process. Like, why
Well,
don't I? Like,
here's
you've
the
got to start asking questions and then you will begin getting answers. Even if you don't know what question to ask, you say, hey, what
ask
question do
that
I
question.
ask here?
That's right. Well,
Yeah,
I
like,
a practical. Here's a practical one. I've been needing to redo our academy university for the martial arts side of the business. I don't really wanted to jump on that very well, but I really do need to redo it. And then I want to do some different things. And I had came up with a course that I want to do. Me and Laura. I mean, I want Laura to do it with me. And then I thought about making that the whole package thing. And then I said, something's not right yet. It's not something's not, I'm not ready for that. And I for instead of forcing it, I just let it go. I said, well, I'm not ready. And I remember you asking me about it, Laura, and I'm thinking, I'm formulating it. Really, I wasn't formulating. I just letting things go. And then all of a sudden I realized, oh, what I want to do is a course, not the whole package. So the whole package has to be different. Now I can do these other things. And since I've done that, things are starting to fill in a lot quicker. But it's effortless because I'm not doing anything. I'm
isn't
not
that cool?
alphabetizing. Yeah, it's way cool because now I'm getting to the point to where I'm saying, I gotta clean up our studio here. I need to start getting ready to film. It's starting to happen by itself. I'm not losing sleep over it. I'm not in deadline. I'm not worried about research. I'm just like going, okay, this is what has to happen next. Is I kind of need an area to film. Oh, this is what's happening next. And it's totally effortless.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, just to finalize, because we do have to end the conversation, is, we every religion, essentially, most of them, spiritual teachers are all teaching the same thing. They're using different words, they're using different languages. Some work for some don't work for others. Some are utilizing religion in a way that works for them, even if it's not the way a spiritual um, way of life might be working. And none of that really matters because we're all getting what we need. And in the same sense, there's a million different ways to build a business, right? We know that there's some principles that we can apply. Some of them work, some of them are required, some of them are necessary. It's different for everybody's journey. And one of the skills that is essential to everyone is to remember who you are and to find the space of home so that you can get your inner guidance. And I'm not saying there's only one way to find that. It's just that it's all the same for all of us. And so when Robert's looking at somebody and he's saying this person doesn't believe in themselves and maybe they're lacking confidence, he's like, you can borrow my confidence. You can borrow my belief in you because I know that you can do this. We do see people as black belts when they step on the mat as white belts because we know that we want to pull them up to that potential. And I essentially do the same thing in the Soulpreneur Global Community, the Soulpreneur Prosperity Academy. I see what everybody is capable of because I know that we are all one and we all have access to the same thing. And I see somebody's true essence. And, our job here is to just show them where that is. All the thoughts that are getting in the way of their own success or what ideas they have or their own thoughts, all that stuff falls away. It really just comes down to remembering who you are and allowing yourself that space and that quiet and this high vibrational energy so that you can see and experience that part of you and then tap into your own guidance. It's so simple. Like I said, the intellect likes to complicate things. It's such a simple idea that the intellect's like, what? It goes into that, it'll try to make things even more complicated. So the key here is to stay in the simplicity of it and to allow the learning curve and take time for yourself, and slowly you do start to see, oh, that was an insight. Oh, this is a thought. Do I want to entertain that thought? Or, oh, this is my intuition. I'm starting to understand what that knowing within me means now. And then you also learn your energy system and how to essentially, eventually master turning energy into form. That's a different topic. But I just wanted to also take the time to invite everybody to the Light Lounge, which is a monthly meetup where we entertain and experience this high vibrational space that allows insights to come in through a really positive high vibration so that people can begin to experience this regularly and move it into their life and then remember who they are and then say, oh, this is what I've been looking for all this time that I've been seeking. This is home. So that's what the Light Lounge is for. So you can check out my website and sign up for that. We'd love to have everybody there. So, Robert, did you want to finalize anything else before we say bye-bye for today?
This is where I just won't say anything for 3 minutes. Nope. I think I'm gonna re-listen to this a little bit because I think people get to know me a little bit as my brain can change in the middle of something after I get it organized a little bit. So I'm actually extremely curious about this episode. I'm actually really curious of if I even made sense. I'm just really curious because I came into this just for the record. I came into this with what are we talking about this morning, and you're like giving me nothing. And you're just telling me, well, we'll find out. And then 2 minutes before this, you said, this is what we're talking about. And I'm like, ah. So I'm going to re-listen to this probably tomorrow or Friday on the drive. Maybe we could do that, Laura. And I'd like to kind of see, because I think we said some really powerful stuff here. But this can be a very confusing, or at least for me, it still is, but it can be a very confusing topic when everybody's coming from a perspective of get shit done, do, think, decide, opposed to let it happen, let it go. It's like two sides to a coin. So I'm really interested in what's happening because I'm seeing it over here calm and I'm seeing all this raging. Give me the 3-step plan. I'm seeing this over there. You don't need a 3-step plan, buddy. Yeah, I need a 4-step plan. That's not what I
Well,
was
you know
saying.
why? You know
So
why? Something to remember as we head out. Please, please take a few minutes of silence for yourself after you listen to this. But something to remember is we're not human
please,
doings. We're not human doings.
I know
We're
we're human.
human beings, and
I
we're
get it.
missing. We have been we have been subjected to a culture and a society that is fueled by masculine energy, which is a doing energy, which is great. We have to have it. You will know that I teach this. I teach people how to do things, but there's also people that are stuck there. And then there's the beautiful being of, or the beautiful energy of feminine energy. And that's the being present, the listening, the feeling, the submerging yourself in the sea of peace and quiet so that you can get what you need from being and then do what you need to do with it. But if we're missing on one or the other, then yeah, we're either living in intellect and ego or we're fully living in being and we're not getting anything done. So it is a beautiful dance of the two. So all
Good.
right. All right. Well, thank you, Robert, and everyone
Thank you.
listening. We will see you next time. Bye
Bye,
bye.
everyone.